How to learn a language based off of your personality type, part 2. So today I'm going to be talking about all of the NF types, INFP, ENFP, ENFJ, and INFJ, and it's going to be a great video. So for those of you guys who do not know your MBTI type, I'm leaving a link in the description so you can take the test. If you are one of these people, sometimes you're getting INFP, sometimes you're getting INFJ, you don't know, that I also will leave another link so you can do a cognitive functions test, because cognitive functions are the best way to really type yourself. That being said, take most of what you hear in this video with a grain of salt, because personality types is a soft science. It's not a hard science. It is also not the most scientific thing out there. However, it could definitely be useful for understanding yourself. And just because something isn't scientific doesn't mean that it isn't useful. Personally, I've found a lot of value for it, and it's really helped my language learning to know that I don't have to follow someone else's advice who has a completely different personality type to mine, because I found through experience it doesn't work. So let's get into it. First thing first, INFPs. INFPs, what you guys want to do before anything else is you guys want to go input heavy. Now this is something I recommend everyone, regardless of personality type. You need to get a lot of input in your target language, of course. However, INFPs tend to always find themselves either in their own internal world or consumed in external worlds, meaning watching TV shows and getting caught up in the stories of various different worlds, whether that's in TV, whether that's reading, whether that's listening to a podcast or whatnot. But however, in terms of inputs, I would highly recommend INFPs not to kind of go too heavily based off of recommendations. Don't watch something in its entirety just because your friend recommended it. Don't worry about the effectiveness of these inputs. Find things that you truly enjoy, whether that's listening to music in your target language, whether that is watching a specific genre of TV shows, watching anime, whatever you want to do, make sure that you do it, because INFPs have lead introverted feeling, meaning their life's direction is really going to go in the direction of their feelings. And if they don't feel personally satisfied with what they're watching, then they're not going to be watching it for long. And the goal here is to really watch as much as you can. So make sure you find stuff that you like. Reading also could be a super helpful tool once you are at a intermediate level in your language. Another thing that INFPs are known for is overthinking and in some cases overfeeling. And typically, maybe that might not be the best thing in life. However, for language learning specifically, it actually can help you out a lot. What I would recommend is when you are a beginner and you're starting to get a grasp of the language initially, when you're thinking to yourself, try to think to yourself sometimes in your target language, and whatever words pop up when you're thinking to yourself that you don't know how to say in your target language, try to make a note of them and jot them down and try to learn them, add them to something like Anki. Also, when you do get to more of an intermediate level and you're able to express yourself a little bit more in your target language, journaling, whether in type format or actually having a journal that you write in that describes how you feel on any given day, or you can kind of write about any theories or ideas that you have. Writing and journaling your thoughts can be super effective and super useful when it comes to language learning. The next thing I would say is, because again, INFPs have lead introverted feeling, it is very important, more so than any other type. I call it to protect your king. Basically, you do not want the world, the external world, to kind of penetrate into your skull and demotivate you for whatever reason, because if you get demotivated as an INFP, it's really not going to be a fun experience. You want to try to keep your motivation up almost at all times. And one of the best ways to do that and to keep you consistent is to find groups, maybe they're Discord language groups, or just groups online full of people who are learning your target language, who are going after the same goals as you, and can keep you accountable, one, and two, can serve as a continuous source of motivation to improve your language skills and to obviously chat with people online, because as introverts you might not be doing a lot of in real life chatting. That being said, I would definitely say to avoid excessive kind of maybe one-on-ones or tutor lessons until you are at more of an advanced level, because I know as INFPs being one of the biggest introverts, you can definitely get drained quite quickly if you're interacting with someone who doesn't get you. The last thing I have to say about INFPs is to make sure that you make use out of your downtime. A lot of INFPs are creative types for work. They might be designers, they might be artists, and they might find themselves with a lot of downtime where they have to design something or create something, and they can also listen to something in the meantime. In that meantime, listen to music in your target language, listen to audio courses like Pimsleur, listen to podcasts, make use of your downtime whenever you have it. Alternatively, a lot of INFPs are gamers, so make sure that if you are a gamer, that you're making use of that time by listening to your target language while you game. So next up is ENFP. ENFP, one of the biggest things that you guys want to do is make sure that you're always having fun. Because of your function functions. Specifically, you guys have dominant extroverted intuition and you have inferior introverted sensing. This leads ENFPs to typically have the shiny object syndrome where they get distracted very easily. One of the things you guys want to do is, while you are language learning, make sure that you are having the most fun possible, because if you're having fun, you have a less likely chance of getting distracted by other things that are not related to languages. Specifically, that means when you are immersing yourself in your target language, that you're watching TV shows or listening to music or listening to podcasts or reading manga, make sure that you're doing things that you truly find fun. That means if you started to read a manga and all of a sudden you're not really into it anymore, don't force yourself to finish it. Stop and start a new TV show that really interests you. Always make sure that you're constantly interested by material in your target language. Next thing that I would say is to make sure that you put yourself in situations where you can speak your target language. That means if you're learning Chinese, you go to a Chinese cafe and you can try to use your powers as an extrovert to start to talk to people, try to make friends. Really try to insert yourself into as many situations, whether that be parties, whether that be meetup groups, where you can actually use your target language. You guys are third slot extroverted thinking, which means that typically you kind of strive to be useful in life and to make use out of the things that you know well. So if you do know a language and you're starting to know it well, I would highly recommend that you talk to people on the street, in the airport. It doesn't matter if they speak your target language. Try to go up to them, try to speak to them, try to make friends, and speak regularly with those friends if you're trying to improve your output abilities. Another really cool thing about ENFPs is that you guys have dominant extroverted intuition, meaning that you guys are always seeing patterns and connections between seemingly unrelated things. And this is going to be your superpower when it comes to language learning. ENFPs are also typically, at least the ones that I know, are typically known for rewatching a lot of their favorite kind of movies and TV shows. I know an ENFP that's watched Lion King like 10 times. I know another one who's watched Friends like 6 times. So if you are one of those ENFPs that can rewatch content often, make sure that you do rewatch things that you've already watched before, in, let's say in English or whatever your native language is, but you rewatch it with no subtitles in your target language. Because if you've watched something a few times before and you already know the gist of everything that's going to happen, and you watch it again in your target language with no subtitles, that is the best form of immersion, because essentially what you're going to be getting is comprehensible input. You're going to be hearing people use the language and you already know what they mean without even knowing the specific words that they're saying. That is perfect. Last but not least, because of the whole shiny object syndrome thing that I talked about, you guys really want to make sure that you have a backup language. Only one, because I know ENFP's biggest issue, seemingly at least with languages, is like kind of really wanting to get good at one, but then you see another one and you're like, oh, this is interesting. You see another one and you keep on switching and you never get good at one language. If that's your goal, to like learn a bunch of them and not really get good at any specific one, that's perfectly fine. However, if your goal is to get good at a specific language and you find yourself constantly being distracted by every other language in the world, then make sure that you select one backup language for the times where you have low motivation or for the times you feel yourself getting distracted. So you can switch to this backup language, and then when the time comes, you can switch back to your main target language. Next up is ENFJ. For you ENFJs out there, one of the biggest things that you guys want to do is surround yourself with people who value language learning. As an ENFJ, your dominant function is extroverted feeling, which means you're going to be looking at the landscape and looking at your social circle and thinking to yourself, okay, if I learn languages, is this going to help my social circle? Does my social circle even value this whole language learning thing? And if the answer is no, it's going to be detrimental, because you're going to feel like learning another language is not going to be useful. There's no one in your social circle that really values language learning. Create a new social circle. Try to go on Discord language learning groups where you can surround yourself with other people who are motivated to learn languages. Try to make friends online with either pen pals, and you can do a language exchange, or people who are also motivated to learn the same language as you. Or, this is a big or, like this is a really big or, because I never recommend this to anyone except for you guys. I think this could be really helpful. A language class in real life. Typically, they're not really super effective at teaching you a language. However, a language class in real life for an ENFJ can do a number of different things. One, it can put you in an environment where you're surrounded by people who are valuing language learning, which is brilliant. And two, there might be other people in the class that might be at a lower level than you that you're able to help. And three, ENFJs sometimes can get competitive. And if you're gonna get competitive, it's gonna be about things that you pride yourself on, like language learning. And if you see someone else in your class class who, you know, thinks that they're the shit and is a bit better at you in your language, it could spur you to be even more competitive and spend more time in your target language, which is perfect. The last but not least, obviously you guys are strong extrovert types. You guys care about people, you care about their opinions, you want to interact with them constantly, and you also learn very well in an extroverted setting. So I would highly recommend to make sure that you are taking tutor lessons regularly and that you have friends that you can regularly practice your language with. This is going to make you feel useful because, you know, there's people that you're going to be able to interact with that you wouldn't be able to if you didn't speak your target language, but also it's going to satiate or satisfy that need just chatting with people in general. That being said, don't do this at the beginner stages. Do it more towards the intermediate stages when you have acquired a considerable amount of the language. Last but not least, my cousin, the INFJ. So I'm an INTJ, and there are some parallels between INTJs and INFJs, but they are quite different, and I'm gonna go into it. So INFJs, like all the other types, especially like most of the introverted types, what you really wanna focus on is getting as much input as possible. Speaking to other people isn't as imperative to INFJ as just consuming the language in its purest form by watching a lot of TV shows, by listening to the music, trying to understand the culture that revolves around your target language, and last but not least, reading. There are a lot of INFJs that are really into reading, whether that's comic books, whether that's manga, whether that's novels, short stories, just Reddit in general. Make sure once you get to, let's say, intermediate level, or even as a beginner, that you're reading something. I feel like for INFJs, reading can be your secret weapon. So another thing about INFJs is that they are people-focused introverts, which is kind of a paradox, but more or less how that looks like in practicality is that they really do care about people and they really care about helping people and their immediate social circle. However, they are still introverts at heart. So the way I think about it is it's almost like they have a barrier, an extrovert barrier, which allows them to interact with people that they like and that they care for around like 2 to 3 hours before the barrier is broken and the introvert battery starts getting drained. As opposed to ENFJs who can do a lot of things in a group setting, I would recommend INFJs to really focus on one-on-ones. Having a study buddy or someone who you can study a language with, let's say in real life, let's say you guys go and get food and then you go practice your languages for an hour or two together, or you can even spend more time together, but for example, both of you guys are working independently. I think that would be a great way at balancing your introvertedness with kind of being people-oriented and people-focused. However, going a bit too excessive on the social interaction, upwards of 3 hours, 4 hours at a time, I think you're going to start draining your introvert battery, so definitely be wary of that. I would say one-on-ones, finding a study buddy would be ideal, either online or in person. The next thing about INFJs is that they have a really interesting blend of introverted intuition, which is a great pattern identifying tool, and is great at kind of coming to a single conclusion from a lot of different patterns and categorizing them. And they also have introverted thinking as their third slot, which allows them to build very strong logical mental maps and mental models of how certain structures or systems work. Which means grammar for INFJs is going to be key. There might be INFJs out there that don't like grammar, but probably more so than any other type. If you do get good at grammar, it's really going to help you because of your third slot introverted thinking. Once you understand what all the puzzle pieces are, your intuition is going to be going crazy, just kind of putting them all together and recognizing them when they do come up in your immersion sessions. So be sure that maybe it's not every day, but every other day that you are looking at grammar rules and maybe work yourself through a basic grammar textbook or audio program. Last but not least, because your dominant function is an introverted one, I know a lot of INFJs that consider themselves as overthinkers that are always in their own head, and it's similar to INTJs. So I would say journaling, especially when you're at an intermediate level, is perfect. Either journaling your thoughts every single day or every other day, or not even just your thoughts, but your ideas, your theories when it comes to language learning or anything in your life can really, really be your secret weapon. Aside from that, when you are at the earlier stages of a language, just thinking to yourself, or at least trying to think to yourself in your target language, can be very helpful as well, similar to the INFPs. Guys, that was the video. I really hope that you liked it. If you did, make sure to subscribe and make sure to hit the notification bell. I will see you guys next time.